Sandra, what do you think about that? A, how the board is appointed by mana whenua, and B, what do you think about the 7 mana whenua members versus the 2 mātā waka members?
Well, I don't have a problem with the way the board is appointed. There's a number of things that concern me about it, though. There's a real risk that the statutory board of our people, representing all of us, could become a captive, involuntary wailing wall for the problems of our people that the council gets to sidestep. And so the professionals who back that board up, our own people, and the council itself, and this comes back to Scotty's important point about, what are our expectations constitutionally with this new council. So it's important that that doesn't happen. It'll be very easy for a cynical mayor to, for example, on a bad day say, well, can't see, well, your advisory committee didn't tell us that. The other thing is, and we've seen these committees established with some fairly feisty people, can I say, back in local government amalgamation in 1989 as well. And again, they worked hard and they made some profound considerations and recommendations to the new city of Auckland then, 14 local authorities into one, and their recommendations were overwhelmingly ignored. So again, it begs the question, what is the status of the recommendations? I get nervous around this issue of Māori still playing in the new millennium an advisory role. There's never been any shortage of advice from Māori and tangata whenua to local government in all the decades since the treaty. The paucity has been the capacity of local government to hear the advice in the first place. So I think again it comes back to Scotty's point, day one, constitutional commitment, never mind the trains. Come on, let's ask Mr Mayor, he seems conducive, and his fellow councillors for some binding commitments to some fundamental principles around the status of the advice, the power of councillors to override that advice, how they would give effect to the work, how they would ensure that irrespective of this committee, Māori within communities in any way, in education and elsewhere, can come as of right like every other citizen in the region to their council over and above. They're the kind of things that need to be screwed down, and it'll take less than 100 days. I'm sure that our clever clogs of our people could screw that down in a week. They wouldn't have to wait 100 days to get that.
Scotty, I'm interested to hear your thoughts too on this board. There are already people who are criticising the makeup of the board, saying it's not fair. With due respect to mana whenua, you will have, obviously they need to have a good share of representation on this board, but why do they have 7 seats, and why do mātā waka, who probably make up the majority of Māori living here in Auckland, only have 2? And isn't this just another model that Rodney Hyde has put on Māori? This is how it's going to work, and take it or leave it.
Quite possibly. I think the message and the underlying message in all of this is that elections are for Pākehā, committees are for Māori. And I think Apiha Te Kauau, who invited Pākehā to settle in Maitemata, invited Governor Fitzroy to develop a city here, with the thought in mind that this was being done as an equal, from one equal person to another equal person. I think that if they look back now, they would be horrified that, especially Apia Te Kauau, that his descendants are now relegated to more or less second-class citizens sitting on consultative committees.
Do you think that's
for the city that they gifted in the first place? And that's what I alluded to with tō tātou muri, tō tātou mua. In the past needs to be recognised, and that's the past from right back then to now, and everything that's gone on with the Manukau Harbour and all of those battles that have been waged, and and the good things that have happened too. They all need to be taken into account so that we can make better decisions for the future. And Ngāti Whātua gifted the most sought after land in the country. Ngāti Marua on Te Raki Pai Whenua, Ngāti Pao, all of these tribes. And for the development of the city, they lost land, they lost rivers, they lost cemeteries. 85 descendants of Ngāti Whātua bowled over for runway 2, all of that kind of stuff. I think that there needs to be a genuine look from the government or from the council to the past, so that they're better informed for the future. And having this committee, I think, is quite patronising, really, towards mana whenua and towards tangata whenua living in Auckland. So I'm not in favour of it. I'm not in favour of it. I don't think it's. I think it's a bit of a cop out, and I think at the end of the day they'll end up being similar to what the Waitangi Tribunal is, where they'll be able to make recommendations. But at the end of the day, the government can just say, "Sorry, we're not going to do that."
Matilda, I can hear you, member.
Well, I mean, this goes. Sorry, you're nattering in the background. I mean, this goes back to partly that question about why it is that it's so important to have the treaty in as part of at the constitutional basis, because the decisions that councils make are often more important even than those made by central government, because they're talking about actual decisions that affect hapu and their right to be decision makers over their own rohe, their natural resources, the management of their own people. These are really core decisions about tino rangatiratanga on the ground. That is why local government and the treaty issues are so critical. But I agree, in some ways the statutory board has got all the risks that any kind of advisory board like this, we've seen mairano happens all the time. It's likely to just become a holding pen for Māori concerns that the council can just say, well, that's their role to sort that out. We've got to make decisions for everybody, and so we'll choose to make decisions as we like. So it's really, there's no point even criticising it in some ways, because it's not a structure that belongs to us. It's not of our choosing. It has a very limited capacity to make any decisions, which is typical. We are continually shut out from making decisions about those things over which we are entitled to be decision makers as Māori, as iwi hapu. And this is just another example of that. So, and that is why this issue around the council taking the treaty seriously and looking at the reform of the council membership and the Māori seats, because until we are decision makers at the table, then all of those other structures we can work with, as we always have had to, and we'll try to make work as most effectively as possible, but they will never belong to us in that sense, because they've been handed down in order to keep us quiet and happy.